So now we're going to practice writing functions based off of word problems. This is directly going to help you with your project. So far, we've used 3 specific formulas. It says 2, but it's really 3. Slope formula, slope-intercept form, and point slope form. So now we're going to use these formulas to solve word problems and to solve applications, just like you did with your project, or going to do with your project. So to help us out, we have to understand what these mean. So we're used to M representing, what does M represent? What does M normally represent? So, let's see, KVR said for football, do we have to put a specific position? No, because you're using the league minimum salary. So M is the slope. When you're looking at a word problem, slope is normally the rate of change. Rate of change, how much something costs. B is normally what? What's B normally? Y-intercept. So at least I know that Greg and Meir are here in class today. Everybody else must be chilling. And we'll find out once I start looking at these projects. So, B is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is normally your starting amount. How much are you starting with? Starting amount or your down payment? So X and Y depends on the problem. X and Y depends on the problem. However, X is the item you can control. X is the item that you can control. Y is the result. So for example, you can control how many hours you work. You can control how many miles you drive. You can control how many words you can type. X is what you can control. Y is the result that happens based off of what X is. So if you have trouble trying to figure out what is X and what is Y, X is whatever you can control. Let's see, Greg, I saw that you came off mute. You had a question, buddy? Yes, sir. All right. So let's look at our first example. So case number 1. So if I was taking notes right now, which you should, I definitely would have written all this down. Because I would need this. We're going to do example 1. So case number 1, beginning with the slope and the y-intercept. At Happy Travel Car Rental Company, the daily cost to rent a minivan is $19 plus 25 cents per mile. Write an equation to model the total cost Y of renting a car based on the number of miles X. How much is it to rent a minivan and drive 150 miles? So, he told you what X represents. X is the number of miles. Oops, I didn't mean to cross it out. X is the number of miles. And Y is the total cost. So M, your slope is your rate of change. And your B is your starting amount or your down payment. So let's set this up. So we have to write the equation before we can use 150. So pretend that 150 isn't there for a second. The 150 right now isn't there. The 150 isn't there. So if the 150 isn't there, do we know how many miles we went? Do we know how many miles we went? No. Yeah, simple question. Either yes or no. So we don't know the number of miles. Do we know the total cost? We know the starting cost. How much is the starting cost? $19. 25 cents per mile. That is your slope. That is your rate of change. Any questions so far? And if you don't understand something, you need to ask. Just sitting there being in your feelings about it ain't gonna change anything. Being in your feelings ain't gonna change nothing. You still gonna be responsible for it. So we have a slope and we have a y-intercept. So if we have a slope and a y-intercept, that means we can use that formula. Y equals mx plus b. Any questions so far? So let's go ahead and write the equation. So we have y equals your slope is 0.25x plus 19. So there's your equation. So that's one part. Part two. How much is it to rent a minivan and drive 150 miles? Now, we can use 150 miles because we have an equation to plug it in. Now we can use 150 miles. So 150 miles, is that X or is that Y? X. So 0.25 times 150 plus 19. We let the calculator do some work. 0.25 times 150, 37.5 plus 19. So that's 56.5. So you put another extra zero. $56.50. So if you drive 150 miles, that's how much you're going to be paying. $56.50. Any questions? Example number one. Real nice when hybrid starts up, I can, or at least the people that are in here, I can check to make sure that they're on the right track. Get a little bit back to normal. All right. Let's do example 2, and then we'll finish the rest on Monday. One of your friends gave a recommendation for a caterer that charges $22 per person served. She did not know the initial cost for the caterer, but she did know that a party of 45 guests had cost $1,200. Write an equation that models the total catering charge Y in relation to the number of guests X. How much is the original amount for catering? How much would it be for 80 guests? So if this problem sounds familiar, this was the problem that was on the edge of credit. So now you're being shown how to solve it. So X is the number of guests. Y is the total charge. M would be your rate of change, rate of charge, and B is your initial cost. So let's see what we know. So we can't use this 80 because that's in the question they're trying to ask. So we can't use the 80 yet, that's in the question. So, did they, at any point, did they tell us a number of guests? They tell us a number for the guests. $45. I told you that 45 guests. How much does 45 guests cost? $1,200. So if you know an X and a Y, that means you have a point. 45, comma, 1,200. So, rate of charge. Did they tell you how much they were going to charge everybody? $22 per person. So there's your slope. M equals 22. Did they tell you how much the initial cost was? This should be easy. No. She did not know the initial cost of catering. So I don't know that. At least I don't know it yet. But look at what you have. You have a slope and you have a point. You have a slope and you got a point. That means, guess what? You can now find the equation. Any questions before we continue? All the stuff that we're going to learn so far, now we actually put it to use. Those of you who are thinking of running a company, if you can't do basic math, then guess what? People can run all over you and take all your money. Rip you off in the process. Have fun with that. So, here's your slope. Here's your point. That means you have an x value and a y value. So there are two ways that you can solve it. You can use y equals mx plus b. 1200 equals 22 times 45 plus b. Or you can use point slope form. Y minus 1200 equals 22, x minus 45. You can now pick which formula you use. You get to pick which one you use now. So I'm going to solve it both ways so that you can see that it'll work. If I use slope-intercept form, what's 22 times 45? Calculators. 990. So if I want to get b by itself, subtract 990 on both sides. So b is equal to 210. So your equation, you have your slope, you have your y-intercept, and you have your slope. Y equals 22x plus 210. There's your equation. If you did it using the other formula, y minus 1200 equals 22x minus 22 times 45 is 990. Add 1200 to both sides. You have y equals 22x plus 210. You get the exact same equation. So now you can answer the rest of the problem. So how much was the initial cost? Initial cost is your y-intercept. What's the y-intercept? 210. So that means even if nobody eats, they still got to pay them $210. That's if nobody eats. But they asked how much would it cost for 80 guests. We can answer that question now. Take 80 and plug it in for x. $22 times 80 is 1,760 plus 210. So it's $1,970 for 80 people. So for those of you who know how to cook, there's some money out there for you if you know how to cook. But you gotta be good though. So you put the whole thing on the screen. But yeah, it's a lot of work. So that means you have to know what you're doing. So quarter day.